at some simple things that the child has done, but which has brought in the edge to the response. Now, the prompt selected has been clearly stated right at the start of the commentary. Now, when I'm saying when I'm breaking down the whole commentary, there is no fixed pattern to be followed in the organization in terms of should it start with the prompt or can you kind of integrate it? That's up to how each facilitator, TOK facilitator, wants to kind of hone those skills and help the organizational skills of the commentary to fall in place. But we'll just look at this particular commentary, and I would say this is written in a very nice, straightforward, organized manner. There are some elements which you may say it's not really required, but nevertheless, having added that, how it brings that edge is what we will look at. So the commentary starts clearly by the student saying, I have selected the prompt. What I've done is I've highlighted it so that we can then link it later. So I've highlighted the prompt in yellow. Clearly, the prompt is what challenges are raised by the dissemination and or communication of knowledge. Now, what the student then goes to do is, before straight away moving on to the objects and saying, these are the objects that I will be delving into to explore the prompt, the student has gone into breaking the prompt down so that there is a clear focus that's been displayed or shown, so that the examiner, as the examiner reads through the commentary, can link those aspects to what I have highlighted in pink here. So if you see, this exhibition explores this prompt by reflecting on knowledge and language, and more specifically on whether, now it's, the child could have ended with knowledge and language because it clearly says dissemination or communication of knowledge. But the child goes to talk of what specifically of the knowledge and language, where the student goes to say more specifically on whether within the umbrella of knowledge and language, subtext and connotation, whether they come in the way or create a confusion in the whole dissemination or communication of knowledge. So the child is talking of why has the child chosen language? Because of the angle of dissemination, of delivering the knowledge and how knowledge gets delivered. And language, for all of us, we know, is not simply language as we see it in text, but there are different forms language manifests itself when we use the word language. So then the child goes to say, in particular, it seems that subtext and connotation can be particularly challenging as they are often only recognized by people that share some particular knowledge or experiences, and it seems that they can easily be interpreted very differently by different people, which can cause confusion and hinder communication of knowledge. So the child then further exemplifies what the student has said here. Do you want me to take questions at the end or you want to ask?
No, I just want to add something, if I may.
Yeah, of course, of course.
So here, because we were analyzing it in our class also, here if we notice that the student has already opened up an argument, you have the claim and the counterclaim here itself. Because he's saying, the student asks, like whether the subtext and connotation always create confusion. So it sometimes may, it sometimes may not.
Absolutely.
So hence the student has already opened it up for the claims, counterclaims already.
Correct. So the angle of the knowledge and not simply talking about the object, but the object in relation to claims or counterclaims that the student has made, you will see as we proceed with each object. So you see this introductory paragraph, though really not mandated or required, when you begin to write, the child could have said the prompt that I have selected is this, and I will be using these three objects to delve into how we look at the real world application and the knowledge that comes out or the knowledge issues that come forward through these three objects. It could have been just about that much too. But the child has gone to break the prompt, say what of the prompt, and say how of the what of the prompt. So this introductory paragraph, that's why I've added this over here. The introductory paragraph, how does this help? Though not mandated or required, it breaks the prompt down into its subparts and clearly indicates what exactly from the prompt is being focused on. In what Jaya meant was where she broken into making a claim and at the same time saying, does this claim hold good always, or is there a other perspective to the claim? And that is what has been broken down here. Yes, Lopa, before I move to the object now.
So I just wanted to add here also, Bajla, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
That the question itself is asking you to look at the challenges, because the prompt says what challenges are raised by the dissemination. So clearly, the challenges would make the entire commentary more argumentative and looking at, not being a descriptive, but rather looking at different perspectives and different challenges that the communication and dissemination will entail.
Yeah. So
that
is yes.
Prompt itself is leading this argument.
Absolutely. But what we have to be mindful of when we are looking at the prompt is how we interpret the word challenges. It is very, very important. Are we looking at it? Normally we say all of us are challenged today with the pandemic. So we're looking at it always negatively. But are we looking at, despite the pandemic being a challenge, are there possible connotations to that too? So the interpretation of the word challenge itself, as teachers of TOK, we have to be extremely careful, because otherwise we ourselves may very subtly or very explicitly direct the entire thing towards a negative connotation. And you will see it does not always connote negatively. Again, the word dissemination has to be understood very, very clearly. And that is why the word language has come in over here. Again, understanding that language is not only in terms of texts or word, but there are different ways language manifests itself. So these are certain things we have to be mindful of for the prompt ourselves. And the student here clearly has displayed to the examiner the understanding of these little fine nuances in the prompt itself, and clearly indicated this through whatever these two aspects that I've highlighted. Okay, so you've already seen the opening itself is beginning to bring in the edge to the entire commentary for the examiner. Now the examiner will clearly look for whether the student has gone into subtext and whether what are the challenges that come with subtext. What does subtext really mean? And when you say challenge, what is the word challenge, and how do challenge and subtext link? What is the link between the two, and how does this go in communication of knowledge? And then the examiner will automatically then further look for, has the child or the student delved into connotations, and whether the same thing deals the link between connotation and challenges of dissemination or communication of knowledge. If this is not there, it is easy for the examiner to say the depth, or it's like I know in literature or in language and literature, we say the introductory paragraph has a thesis. The child has made his or her thesis here. And in the thesis, the child is saying, what am I going to delve into by talking of subtext and connotation? So if that thesis is not dealt into clearly later, for the examiner, it's easy. Now, why I'm keeping on linking between what the child has written and the examiner, because you are all examiners. You're looking at the commentaries and grading the commentaries. So these are the small little things that you have to be able to pick up. So it's good when you kind of highlight and put a comment. When you see something, even not just giving suggestions when you're giving feedback, but also commending the child when the child has done something correct. Because it's telling you, this has been done, so check it. This is not done, so say do you want to look at this, which seems to be not there? Don't tell what to write, but say. So when in your feedback, that's a good way to proceed. Any questions so far with the first part of the commentary from anybody?
Yeah. So Manjula ma'am, so this is more likely to be supposed to be like the introductory paragraph of an essay?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Also, knowledge in language is also one of the code, the optional themes which is there prescribed by the IB.
Yeah.
So it's actually serving both purposes.
Purposes, absolutely. Yeah. Now with that student moves to the object. Clearly, the child has said object one, what the object is, and the image of the object. Now, what does the child delve into? You will see what I've highlighted in green in all the three objects is where the student has linked the object to the prompt. So the student begins with, this cup was used by Starbucks in 2017 and was controversial because some people viewed the symbol of the two hands holding hands on the cup. This is what the student is referring to over here. I tried doing some highlights, but my tech skills failed me. As a sign that Starbucks was prompting a homosexual agenda because they saw the cups as having an LGBT subtext. Now, can you see that student has brought in aspects of what he or she said in the introduction of the first object. Many other people just saw the cup as spreading joy and love during the holiday season and did not think that there was any particular subtext at all. So it's just the entire image, the colors, which can easily be linked to Christmas. So how subtext of looking at the linking of hands is viewed by a group versus another group that looks at it as just spreading joy and happiness. So there are two interpretations that have already come out. This links with what the student has said in the introductory paragraph, and automatically this is a link that the student has made to the prompt, where you're talking of challenges raised by dissemination or communication of knowledge. So you can also call this the introductory paragraph, where the student is linking the prompt to linking the commentary of object one to the prompt, and also linking it to what he or she said in the introductory paragraph. Now, there's another aspect which says, Starbucks spokesperson said that they had intentionally designed the cup so that the customers could interpret it in their own way. So an angle that is being brought in where interpretations were for the Starbucks as a company, they wanted interpretations to be open and to be viewed in the way whatever people wanted to view them as. Now, in this way, the cups highlights how confusion arising from the use of subtext can be useful or can actually even be used by people intentionally to provoke discussion. So now where does this link now to say, if the cup generated a lot of media attention for the cup, while still allowing them to say that how the cup was to be interpreted was up to the individual customers to decide. So where is that? Can you see the link between what the subtext did or what the images on the cup? It's not the cup itself. We are looking the images on the cup, what it led to, and what was the intention of the company, and why that intention was left to be open-ended, and whether the subtext has led to different interpretations, and therefore linking it to dissemination or the way knowledge is communicated. So for those who read the subtext of the two linking hands as an agenda for the LGBT, that was the dissemination of knowledge. And for the others who looked at it as the colors of Christmas, was the dissemination of knowledge of the festive, merry mood surrounding a festive time. So over here, it being Christmas, with the Christmassy colors that you normally see, the greens and the reds that are associated with Christmas. So now when you move, the child has moved down to now concluding the explanation of the dissemination and communication of the knowledge by saying, while both of these different groups, so this is the link now made directly to the prompt at the end, where what the child has talked about the subtext moves into a holistic explanation of it. While both of these different groups interpreted the cup this way, their reaction was very different, with one seeing this as very positive and one being very upset about it, yet other people didn't see the subtext at all. So in this particular case, it wasn't only that the subtext itself was only seen or understood by some groups and not others, but also that the reactions to that subtext also differed very dramatically. So the student has gone on to say, when knowledge gets disseminated or communicated, what is it that leads towards it? And what, through that, the way that it leads towards that, what could then that, how could that then impact in a real world scenario? Any questions? Am I sounding vague?
Also, the aspect of why this is important for the exhibition has also been, written twice. So that also is covered here.
If you see throughout the clarity of dissemination of and communication of knowledge, whether and the way it challenges is clearly there throughout the whole thing. What is to be noticed is it's not a description of the cup. It's not about how the student loves Starbucks and so went to Starbucks and picked up a Starbucks coffee. So this is what you all need to be mindful about. When I remember, why I'm saying this is when we were doing the moderation in the first instance, many students talked of when the student is talking about how the personal engagement of why this object comes from the student. You don't have to bring in a story about how fond of Starbucks you are, who in the family loves the Starbucks and things like that. But it's about what of this object links to the prompt and the explanation or the breakup of the prompt, which is very, very significant over here. A line here or there does not matter, but a heavy description about a strong emotional connect, if you have written that, it's fine. But beyond that, you still have to then talk about this. Now, what happens when you do that is you may run short of the word count. You may exceed, not run short, you may run short of space because you will exceed the word count. Yes, Jay.
No, I just wanted to also mention that the student has also looked at the TOK concept interpretation and has not really come to some sort of an answer, like whether communication is hindered or it is opened up, or it is, only that the multiple perspectives have been explored.
Absolutely.
And something else which I wanted to ask, although you mentioned that I can ask all the questions later on, is it essential that in every object the student has to mechanically mention that it is appropriate for the exhibition, because is it essential?
See, it's up to how the child is then going to break it up.
Yeah, so it can be implicit also, right?
Absolutely, it can be implicit also. Absolutely, because it's just should not be a description of the object that you have what you all have to now. Even if the description came, but the knowledge angle of it did not come out, then it would lack completely in what the TOK aspect to the whole thing is. And the knowledge angle will come out only when you can make very explicit links to the prompt.
Yeah, I don't think it should be mechanically that this is useful for the exhibition, because in all the
No, it
prompts,
need
no?
not be.
It can be implicit. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely,
Fine.
absolutely,
Thank you.
absolutely. This is
But I was wondering, Jay, what happens is the only disadvantage what we have is if students make things more implicit. We all are examiners, we know. We are told, do not read between the lines. You're not supposed to interpret what the child has done. So maybe a little, maybe once in a while, a line won't make a difference where you actually tell that the student has understood the connection, because the connection between the prompt and this, or maybe the inclusion of this object, will really be very helpful to get a good grade. So somewhere if the examiner is not able to read that implicit meaning, I mean, I'm just saying, so probably you will just want it to be so clear. It shouldn't be explicit, but I will not say that it should be so implicit that the examiner will understand. Probably you know how difficult it is probably here. So if you probably do it in that one line, or otherwise, at least not in the line, but in a way that the examiner will understand, it will be better probably.
so, Mona, even if the child did not write, this cup is particularly interesting.
That is what I said. In some way, which is not implicit, but not mentioned that way.
No, but even if the child simply said that this cup was intentionally designed, a Starbucks spokesperson said that this cup had been intentionally designed, so that customers could interpret it in their own way, is saying it. So even if without this line, that's what Jenna is trying to say, it's absolutely fine. But this line is important because this makes the link of the cup to the prompt.
Exactly. So you don't need those lines. It is important because, but somewhere where the child has made it evident, I mean, in any way in which it is.
Also, Manjula, when we see the assessment criteria, a commentary goes to excellent, where it says there is a strong justification of the particular contribution that each individual object makes to the exhibition. So I think that also we cannot ignore.
Correct. That is why I'm saying what we are doing now is we are hinging ourselves on this language. Please ignore this line, particularly interesting. This line that I've highlighted here in green is why it is appropriate and matches the exhibition. If this was not there, then it would be lacking. If the first line was not there, it does not matter. It still exactly says the same thing. It will still be strongly indicative without this line that this particular object links to the prompt and the exhibition, therefore.
Manjula, excuse me, if the child does the same in the conclusion, where he concludes by saying the first object, second object, and the third object, how they are important for the exhibition, would that also be good enough?
Ideally, I would say that each object should bring out its significance. When you're writing about each object, why are you waiting and making the child speak about an object's significance at the end of the commentary? Why should you wait to do it at the end of the commentary? It should very clearly come out when you are commenting on the object. When I use the word commenting on the object, it is not commenting about the object in the sense of the description. So that is why it should not be a narrative. The moment this becomes a narrative, your knowledge angle is gone out of the window completely.
Right.
Any more questions in this one? That's why I've just done these highlights in different colors. This is linking to the prompt, which the student, now also look at the consistency in the organizational style of the child. Now again, the question may be nowhere does it say it has to be organized. But remember, for an examiner, and I'm sure Ashwini Parmar, who is examining TOK, will be able to also support in what I'm just saying. Here, there is no syllabus. It's all about thoughts and thinking. And so if it is not coherently and cohesively organized, there could be a lot of ambiguity in what is being said, even if what is being said is correct. So if you follow a certain pattern, and even if it seems childish, because the child has done this first, then the child has begun each object description, not each object commentary with an introduction, then gone on to talk of the knowledge derivative coming from there, and then gone on to a conclusion, and has followed this pattern through the length. You will see as I move to object 2 and 3, it helps the examiner to clearly see what the child is saying and link it to the child's introductory paragraph or the prompt if the introductory paragraph is brief. I, as an examiner, would strongly recommend that you should have an introductory paragraph. Now it's up to you whether to have it or no. Then clearly the student is saying object 2, my Chinese English translation dictionary, the picture or the image of the object. Now again, if you see what is highlighted in green, links to the object to the prompt. This object is a dictionary I use to help me translate between Chinese and English. The student has made a personal connection with line 1, however simple it may sound. When we think about how language is translated so that it can be communicated between people who speak different languages. So now the student is bringing in the angle of two people speaking where the language of the two people is not the same. It's not a Chinese to a Chinese. It could be a Chinese to an American or a Chinese to an Indian, whichever way you want to look at it. We can see that this poses many challenges to communication of knowledge. How comes particularly because, now, why is there a challenge? The student goes to say particularly because of the way that language uses connotations, euphemisms, proverbs and idioms that go beyond the literal meaning of a word. That is why when you open a dictionary, it is not about simply learning word meaning. I remember when I was back in school, that was years and years and millions of years ago, I think, we had this typical style of teachers we would read a particular English story. The teacher would write word, meaning, then the teacher would make us use these words in sentences of your own, and then there would be the typical question answers. The whole thing is so outdated now because a particular word may have many meanings. How the interpretation of that meaning would depend on context, and what the context is what is going to be talked about by the student, and where does that context come from and what influences that context. And now you see, again, this is in green here because it links to the pink that the student has talked about, highlighted here. The first object, the student talked about subtext. The subtext in that particular object being all the images. The second thing is about connotation. That is word meaning. What does connotation mean? What does denotation mean? Euphemisms, how do they differ and why do they differ? And because it is in this way, what challenges comes across when there is dissemination or communication of knowledge? The meaning and true essence behind many words and phrases is often unique to a specific language. And why is it unique to a specific language? Also, the cultural and historical understanding that comes with an intimate knowledge only a native speaker can acquire, particularly things like connotation, where language can have not only its literal translation, but also can have many other meanings. Now, that understanding of that many other meanings will come when you have the background. And that is what it means by connote. One is it denotes, it straight away says this word has these many meanings. One is connotations when it comes with the context. And certain connotations can be understood. I was discussing this with Ela in the morning, and we were talking of if you open the Gita and an Indian reads the Gita versus maybe a American who's reading the Gita. What the connotations the Indian could derive would be very different from what an American would derive. Now, this is because of the whole angle of the cultural background and the intimate knowledge of the cultural background that one has. So you see, this links to what the student has said over here. And automatically, we have seen that this is derived from this. So how beautifully each object begins with linking the object to the prompt. The opening of each of it is linking the object to the prompt. And then, of course, concluding and then saying where language and culture can really impact on communication of knowledge and on whether we see connotation or subtext at all, as those nuances might be lost in translation. And all of us know there is always meaning lost in translation. That is why when works are translated into another language, many a times you will see certain words italicized because they can maintain the original word. Because the moment you change it, the entire essence of it is lost. I have also included this dictionary in this exhibition because of how it represents me. Now, this, though it's again sounding simple or sometimes even childish, I think is very essential because the child is talking of a personal experience. How it represents me and the challenges around language and communication that I have personally experienced in my life as a DP student. For example, I personally experienced how some words and ideas do not translate easily from Chinese into English. So because of this lost in translation or the inability to literally translate, or the fact that certain words are understood best if you have an intimate knowledge of the culture or the historical background, there is the chance in challenges in the dissemination and communication of knowledge. How beautifully the child has brought forward the whole thing here. Simple, straight, no description of I am Chinese and I found it very difficult to study because I would use the dictionary, but the dictionary did not actually give me the real meaning. Now, many will interpret personal engagement as this. But okay, having said this, where is it linking to the prompt? If you say all this and don't say what the child has said here, again, it becomes a narrative about you will show personal engagement, but you will not show any TOK in it. Any questions on this object 2? Now moving to object 3. This is a song. Object 3 is Billie Holiday's song Strange Fruit. And the student goes back to subtext. The subtext here being the images of this fruit, as you can see, and the title, Strange Fruit, which links to this. So this becomes the subtext. And now look at how the subtext is being viewed in this particular object. The song Strange Fruit was sung by Billie Holiday in 1939. It is often seen to use vivid imagery to protest against the treatment of Black people in America and to have a subtext about promoting civil rights. This can be seen to be heavily insinuated throughout the song, especially with the use of strange fruit as a gruesome metaphor for the lynching of Black people. So how the subtext leads to what kind of knowledge is being communicated. Again, what the student has done, clearly linked the object to the prompt. See, the whole organizational style is similar. This song makes us think about whether there are things that only some people see or understand because of their culture, personal experiences, etc. So now the child, can you see the student is making certain links that the student has said here and bringing in a new angle to the whole knowledge coming out of it. I do think that subtext and connotations are sometimes interpreted very differently by different groups, and the group that a person belongs to impacts on the meaning and on what is being communicated. For example, Strange Fruit now was sung by Billie Holiday, who's a Black artist himself. So the intimate knowledge that will come about in conveying through the subtext of the song, whether it is the image in this particular thing as well as the lyrics that will come. That is also subtext over here. The fact that this subtext was being expressed by a Black artist means that the singer was themselves part of a group of people who had been marginalized for so long, which makes the song lyrics even more powerful and emotional. And so the dissemination of knowledge was powerful where it came from a personal experience through intimate knowledge, for the fact that the one who wrote the song himself was a Black who had gone through, had personal experience. So very clearly the student has once again brought out through very simple sentences clear how knowledge gets disseminated. Now, again, I remember this discussion when we were doing the first moderation. Do we really need to link objects, or do we just need to link the objects to the prompt? And I remember some saying yes, some saying no. There is no hard and fast rule. However, if you can make that link, and if that link brings an edge to your commentary, why do you stop teaching the child how to make that link? So now comes, if you've seen, I put it in purple here, the use of metaphors goes. In this way, this song is helpful, is a helpful addition to this exhibition because it provides a good contrast to the dictionary. The dictionary highlighted that subtext and connotations can sometimes cause confusion because they add a layer of interpretation to the literal meaning of language. But this song shows that sometimes subtext and connotation can actually help communicate complex ideas and emotions, because these are social issues and these are deep emotions which are intangible, rather than being a challenge to the communication of knowledge. So there is a link made between two chosen objects and how they link to the prompt that has been chosen. Not mandated. However, in this particular case, I think is very powerful in the entire piece or the discourse that the child has brought forward through the commentary. And then yet again, a conclusion that the child brings in, thinking about this song, I have realized that connotations and subtext don't always have to be challenging or misleading. If the person is trying to evoke a powerful meaning or emotion, often words that have many layered meanings deliver a more powerful impact. So I put in a comment over here, objects used in relation to each other. Again, this is not required. However, here the student has been able to display a very good understanding of the chosen prompt between the objects. And so if you see, this is the examiner comment. The student has clearly identified 3 specific objects and has effectively linked each one of the selected prompt, which I indicated through the color green throughout. There is also a strong justification for the selection of each object. The student clearly said why this fits well, why object 1 fits, why object 2 fits, why object 3 fits. The student has included an introduction to their work. It should be noted that this is not required, but students are free to include a short introduction and theme and explain why they have focused particularly on issues around subtext and connotation. They are very essential for the prompt. The student then makes explicit references to the prompt throughout the response. In their discussion of the third object, the student makes a comparison between the dictionary and the song. It should be noted that there is again no requirement that the student makes connections or comparisons between their objects. They may choose to do so, but it is also perfectly acceptable to discuss each of the 3 objects entirely individually. The piece of work should be judged, of course, this is for the overall, holistically. Now, this is important for all of us to note, using the marking instrument, which all of us have, which means that, for example, the discussion of the dictionary should be rewarded wherever it appears in the response, not just where it appears under the section labeled object 2. So in case a student has done that, so now over here, besides what the student has said about the dictionary, there is more added over here too, which then adds on to whatever has been explained earlier and hence should be awarded accordingly. So you look at it eventually holistically. So an ideal situation is when you are marking, you break it down in this pattern. Your accuracy in the mark awarded will be almost perfect or near perfect when you do it this way. It doesn't take very long, but this is the best way to do it. Any questions? Can I stop share? Anyone, any questions?
Ms. Manjula, just clarifying the point which you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So when we are marking it, we are just going to look at one object at a time and not taking the points which the student has mentioned elsewhere for the same object?
See, for you to understand, you're not either you do a skim. Skimming is when you look at the whole piece together.
Okay.
And then you scan. So you then break it up. However, when you're awarding marks, like what's mentioned here, if the student has mentioned points in 2 places of a particular objects, the mark, it should be considered when you're awarding the mark.
Oh.
Are you getting what I'm trying to say?
Okay.
So it is important for each examiner to be able to skim and scan and then once again look at it holistically. So you go back to the whole piece together. Because when you scan, you're breaking it. You're breaking. Why do you do a breaking? Because you want to see whether the commentary for each object is leading to knowledge, real world application in link to the prompt. Otherwise, you'll not be able to see it because there are that many words there in front of you.
Yeah, not a question, Manjula, but a point which if we noticed in this entire commentary, the student has not explained too much about the object. Where if I remember, I have gone through quite a few commentaries of our students from quite a few groups. Students have spent a lot of word count on describing the object itself.
Yeah. So it's about the,
yeah.
So
so there they have wasted a lot of word count. Yeah.
The mobile phone is a new tool.
Yeah.
An advancement in technology. It helps us to reach our near and dear ones in times of emergency. So if you go on talking about it, it's fine if you talk about it, but if you don't come to what has to be written about it, and in the whole process of describing it, the child then starts exceeding word count, which for guarantee the child will, then automatically the child is going to lose.
And somewhere or the other, the examiners will find the comment definitely descriptive than analytical. Because you have
the examiner will have to read the whole thing. There is no doubt.
It will be very descriptive.
Also, Manjula, the choice of objects also should be such that it will lead to a different, including different perspectives. Because sometimes what happens is that so all the 3 objects, they were having certain kind of a certain kind of a feel towards leading into an argument.
See, if you're repeating the same commentary that you've written for object 1, again for object 2, and again for object 3, obviously doesn't make sense. Yeah. That is why I said, though there is no requirement of an introductory paragraph, but if you break the prompt and say, this is what the focus is going to be, or in other words, you have a thesis statement, it's definitely going to support a student's commentary. See, we don't have to go by the book that the rubric has said, blah, blah, blah. Of course, that's the guidelines on which you will eventually mark. But it is important for us to be able to see if you bring in a certain angle or a tweak to it, is it going to enhance the entire commentary? At the same time, write what you're supposed to write. So the commentary can be very short, but writing a thesis in your commentary, I think, is extremely important. Because then, even if you guide the student that way, the student also will know, I have to make sure that I have said this, this, this. Have I said this here? Have I? Now that could be now the subtext was associated with object 1 and object 3, and the connotation was associated with object 2. To a very large extent. So the student knew that I had to touch upon these things. And that was coming from the prompt. Now, as teachers or facilitators of TOK, you have to make sure that when the student is coming forward with a thesis, the child is not changing the prompt. It's just like the essay title. What do you do with the essay title? You break the title down. But in the breaking of the title down, you cannot change what the title is asking. That is what is important.
And with the thesis statement and a good intro and good organization, actually it's helping the students for essay writing only. At the end, all this will contribute to good essay writing only. So there also we do emphasize on thesis statement and all. It'll just make it easier for them to just then select a topic and continue with that.
Okay, if there are no other questions, how do I share it? Ila, tell me how do I email it to everybody?
No, you can share the same way. We all can read it together and make our own notes.
Okay.
So, Manjula, there is no conclusion in this commentary, and the contrast of perspectives is brought in the third object. So, this is what I was meaning when I was talking about the conclusion. Can the importance and the different multiple perspectives that are coming out of the three objects, can they be brought out? In this case, it's brought out in the third object, but can it be brought out if there is word limits, count still left, in a few concluding lines?
I would say that there should be a conclusion. The conclusion is normally drawing from what you have said for each object. And then you want to have an entire basic conclusion where you're talking of all the three, again, in relation to the prompt, it's up to you.
Okay. Right.
So here after this session, so are we supposed to go through our commentaries once again and
I think it would be good if you go through the commentaries once again.
Manjula, but however, if a student has no conclusion and otherwise everything is in order, so we should not really go about actually penalizing them.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Because then since you mentioned that it is a good idea. However, if a student's conclusion is missing, so we should not really witch hunt then and start penalizing the student.
But if the commentary for each of the objects also does not have a conclusion,
then it's a problem.
Then it definitely is a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because that means the child has not linked it. One is you link with an introduction to the prompt, then you go on to say what you've said in the introduction of the prompt of the object, and then you say how this finally closes your argument there. You draw from the argument and link it to the prompt. So you can do it object-wise, a conclusion, or you want to put it at the bottom, you can do it at the bottom. But according to me, if it's there object-wise, I think it's pretty strong because it's coming straight away for the examiner to read, object to object.
Manjula, just one thing. So Ashwini, as per your question, on 27th May, we have a session 11 to 12:30 for the final moderation of TOK marks. So that is the time when you will sit with your own group of teachers and you will moderate your own set of students and give final marks during that 1.5 hour time. Okay.
Okay, so here is, I know we are already running short of time and I don't know whether we'll be able to do the whole thing. This is a commentary. As you can see, there is, I don't want to say anything.
Can it be mailed, Manjula?
Yeah, I think, Ela, it will be better to email it.
Okay.
You have them as a group, then it will be easier to just email it.
I will just.
Meanwhile, you can just let's start just doing it also.
All you need to do now is just reflect back at the way you've marked your commentaries.
I have mailed, check.
Sorry? Yeah.
I have mailed, if they can just check.
Yeah, so we have to mark it and after that mail the marks to Ela or no? How do we do it?
We have one more day, no?
We have like one more day.
So maybe on that day, what we can do is we can discuss this unmarked piece that has come to all of you, because telling you all to do it in 5-10 minutes is really not fair. Then it's a sharp-shotty job that will happen. So look at the commentary, mark it, put your comments. And then we can discuss this at the start of that second session, and then look at the moderation, because then there is an understanding of what the piece is.
So since this is final marking that we are doing, so the students who were not there for the exhibition, should we still mark them 0 or should we mark their commentaries?
No, now since you will be giving the final marks to us, they are not going to Wiseman. The students won't be able to see them. So even if they have not given the exhibition, you will still mark and give us the marks with final draft.
Okay. And should we write a comment the exhibition was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ela, so we can close it now.
Yeah, I think we can close it.
If any questions are there, you please feel free to connect with me. I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you, Manjula.
Welcome, Babita.
Thank you so much, Manjula. It was really,
Thank
really
you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.